Hello, and welcome to the New York State Higher Education Services Corporation 2021-2022 FAFSA on the web demonstration. We hope that this video will assist you in completing your FAFSA online. The first step is to go into your internet browser and enter the website fafsa.gov, which will bring you to the following page, which is the FAFSA homepage. Here you can either click Start Here if you're a first-time user to the FAFSA, or to log in as a returning user. You're going to click the option that best fits you, and then you should be brought into the login page. On the login page, you're going to be given the option to log in as a student or as a parent, preparer, or student who doesn't have what we call the FSA ID. If you say that you're the student, they're going to first prompt you to log in with your Federal Student Aid ID, which is a username and password that you must create in order to successfully submit and sign your FAFSA online. If you haven't created an FSA ID yet for the student, you have the opportunity to do so now. We do have a video on our site that walks you through the creation of an FSA ID, so you definitely want to check that out if you haven't done so already. If you are the parent of a student and you don't have access to their FSA ID, or you're a student and you don't have your FSA ID yet and you like to just log in by entering your identifying information, you could log in by entering your first name, last name, and social security number in order to start your FAFSA process. Now remember, this is the information for the student, not the parent, so we definitely want to make sure we're entering that correctly. So once we've entered that, you want to double check that you're entering your social correctly by showing it, and make sure that you've checked your social security card, make sure that that matches, and then enter the appropriate date of birth. When we click next, the system will take a second to load, and then it'll bring us back to the similar page, which is just simply going to ask us to reconfirm that our information is correct. We're going to get a little welcome message at the top, welcome John, and now we're able to just double check, make sure that everything that we've entered, including our social, is correct, and then we can go next. We're then brought to the disclaimer page where we're given some information about accepting the terms and conditions of usage of the site. So we're going to read that, and then we're going to accept. And then we're asked to select which school year are we applying for financial aid. Remember, if I'm in high school looking to go to college as a first-time freshman next school year, which is the 2021-2022 school year, then we want to click the appropriate link for that. The 2020-2021 form is going to be available for students who are currently in college who, let's say, forgot to apply for aid. So we're clicking 2021-2022, and then the system is going to ask us to create a save key for our application. The save key is simply a temporary password in case we don't finish our FAFSA today. So if I were to save this, go grab some food, come back, and I wanted to resume, I would be asked to enter my save key that I created at the start of the application. If I complete this application start to finish, then I won't need to remember the save key because my save key will be discarded. So we're going to make a simple little short save key, password, whatever you want to call it, and then we're going to proceed next. So now we're brought to a page where we're given our introduction, where we can kind of read through about different parts of completing the FAFSA process online, answer questions about how long it will take. So you can read through this, and once you're ready, you can simply click Next. The first page of the actual FAFSA application is going to be the student information page, where we're asked to review things like our social security number, our first name, middle initial, last name, and our date of birth. You always want to make sure that the identifying information for the student matches to their social security card. Now you notice I can't change my social security number because once I've already logged in with that number, it's associated with this FAFSA. So if this is not the right number, I need to make sure that I get out of this process now. So this should be the right social security number for our student. So if this all looks good, we're going to simply go next. And then we're asked to enter some additional student information, such as their email address and their phone number. So we're simply going to enter that, and then we're asked to reconfirm. And then we'll enter the student's phone number. It could be their cell phone number. It could be the home number. It's the number of their choice. And then we're asked to enter the student's address, including their city and state. We're then asked about the student's residency in the state that they've listed. So if the student has chosen New York, for example, as a state that they're living in, we're asked, have they lived in New York State for at least 5 years? This question is used to help make determinations about student eligibility for state financial aid programs. Now, if the student just recently moved to New York, they could just simply say no, and they're asked, well, what is their state of legal residence? And if I'm currently living in New York, I'm going to, once again, select New York as my state. But then they want to know, did I start living in New York? Did I become a legal resident of New York before January 1st, 2016? Let's say, for example, I just moved here last year. I would simply say no, and then I'm just asked to enter the year, the month and the year that I first started living in New York. So in this example, I'm going to say that the student started living in New York as of January 2019. We're asked then to enter information about the student's citizenship status. You have three options: that they're a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. Someone who's an eligible non-citizen would typically be someone who has a permanent resident status, such as having a green card. And if you are a permanent resident, you would be asked to enter in what they call the alien registration number, which can be found on your permanent resident card or on your permanent resident documents. It is also sometimes referred to as the USCIS number. Now, if I'm a US citizen, I would just simply enter that status and then I would move forward. If I'm neither a US citizen nor do I have permanent resident status to be considered an eligible non-citizen, you can use the third option, which would indicate that you're not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. Once we click next, we're going to look like we're stuck on the same page. We're not stuck. We're actually getting a message, a reminder at the top that's trying to tell us that we are going to have a link at the end of our FAFSA after we've submitted it that will allow us to start our state financial aid application. So it's warning us that we should definitely look out for that option once we submit our FAFSA, and we'll revisit that a little bit later in this video. Now we're asked some other student information questions regarding our high school completion status. So let's say I'm a high school senior. I'm going to expect that when I finish high school, in June, that I'm going to have a high school diploma. They want to know when I go to college, what kind of degree am I looking to get when I go to college? So if I want to go to a 4-year college, I can say I want to obtain my first bachelor's degree. If I want to go to a 2-year college, I could say I'm working on my associate's. It's not a make or break question. So whatever your preference is, if you rather get into a 4-year school, that's your goal. You can click first bachelor's degree. If you think you're going to start at a 2-year college, you can choose the associate's option. So whichever one you believe. We're then asked, will we already have our first bachelor's degree before we begin college next year? And if I'm just in high school, I've never been to college before, I've never previously earned a degree, I'm just simply going to answer no. Then we're asked what will be our college grade level. So not what year am I in high school, but what will be my grade in college when I start college next year. And so if I've never been enrolled in college, I'm still a high school student, then I'm always going to select never attended college first year. It doesn't matter if I've taken college credits at my high school, if I've taken some college courses, maybe over the summer. Because I'm still in high school, I've never graduated high school, I'm going to be a never attended first year college student. Then we're asked if we're interested in being considered for federal work-study program. That's the program where students can work for their college and earn grant funding that they can use to help pay their way through school. So this special financial aid program, we're going to say yes or no, I don't know. And if you want to learn more information about what work-study is, definitely check out the website studentaid.ed.gov, which talks about all the different kind of federal aid options. Now we're asked about the student's gender. So is this student a male or female? So we'll answer accordingly. Now, if this is a male student, in this example, we're going to say the student's a male. They're going to be asked about their selective service registration status. Now, here's a quick tip about FAFSA. Whenever there's a question that I'm unsure about what they're asking me, let's say I've never heard about selective service before, I'm not sure what that is, I could simply click the question mark bubble on my browser and they'll give me some additional explanation. And what you'll learn here is that the selective service system is the military draft registration system that we have in the US. So if I've never heard of that, I'm not registered with that, I can say no, and then FAFSA will then give me the option if I would like to be registered at this point. Once again, why are they asking me if I want to be registered? Well, they'll explain to me those requirements about how to register and why I should be registering. So it'll be my choice. I can say, no, I would not like to register, or I can say yes. Keep in mind, though, that it is part of the qualifications for federal aid. And so a student's selective service registration status could be an issue for colleges if a student's choosing not to register. So you definitely want to talk to your college about that if you're saying you would not like to be registered with selective service. If I had indicated that this was a female student, I wouldn't have been asked any questions about selective service because right now young women are exempt from being registered for selective service. Here I'm asked to enter my driver's license number if I have one. If I do, I can enter it here. If I don't, I can simply leave this blank. For time purposes, we're going to leave this blank and say the student doesn't have their driver's license. We're asked if we were a foster youth at any time or were we in the foster care system. If that's your case, you can simply say yes. If not, you can say no. There are additional aid resources provided to students who have been in care, so you definitely want to make sure that if you were in the foster care system that you appropriately say yes, so those resources can be pointed out to you at the end of the FAFSA. For informational purposes, the FAFSA wants to know how far did our parents get in their education. So we can select that they only finished high school or maybe they finished college. You know, whatever best fits your parent situation. If you don't know, or maybe you have a single parent, you can indicate other or unknown. So once again, it's not a question that causes any consequence. Here it's just used for informational purposes. So we're going to say in this example that both our parents completed as far as high school. Now we're asked on this following page to enter information regarding what high school are we attending. And there's a special way that this needs to be submitted. We have to type in and search for the name of our high school in order to confirm it into the system. So if I go to a high school with a very long name, you don't have to type out the full name. We can type out part of the name and it'll help identify our school. So we're going to enter in the name of our high school, the city where it's located, and the state. So let's say I went to Alfred Smith High School in the Bronx. So I'll type Alfred Smith, I'll type Bronx, and then I'll enter New York for my state. I'm going to hit confirm, and they're going to try to find any high schools in the Bronx that have the name Alfred Smith. So my high school is accordingly Alfred E. Smith Career and Technical Educational High School. So that's the one that I'm going to select. You may see other variations of your school name. You definitely want to choose the one that most accurately identifies your school. So in this case, this is the full appropriate name of my high school. So I'm going to hit select. And then you'll notice everything that I typed in now is in all caps. And they've written in for me the full name of my high school. And I have this green check, which means that my high school information has been confirmed. And now I can go next. Now, the same way that I use the system to search for the high school that I attend, now on the screen, they're asking me to search and enter in the different names of the colleges I'm applying to. I do not need to be admitted to college in order to apply for FAFSA, but I should be at least applying to a few schools. So here I can enter in some of those names of those colleges that I'm applying to. The maximum number of names that we can list on the screen is going to be 10. If you're applying to more than 10 colleges, we will have a video that talks about how to come back to FAFSA and update your college names if you need to submit it for more than 10 colleges. So you definitely want to look out for that. So in this example, we're going to say that our students applying to colleges in New York State. So we're going to enter New York as the state. Now we don't need to know the full name of our college or even the city. Let's say I'm applying to schools that are in the state university system. In this case, we call that SUNY. So I can just simply type SUNY and hit search. And the system is going to search for all the different colleges in New York that have the name SUNY associated with it. So in this case, they pulled up 32 different results, and I can kind of scroll through this list and then check the box, not click the name. I'm going to check the box next to the SUNY school that is the SUNY school I'm applying to. So let's say, oh yeah, I'm doing SUNY Binghamton, I'm applying to SUNY Albany, I'm applying to SUNY at Buffalo. And then once I have those schools added, I can either go next, because those are all the schools that I'm already applying to, I'm all set, or I can click add more schools if I want to search the system again and find more schools. So let's say, once again, not only am I doing SUNYs in New York, I'm also applying to a few CUNY schools. So I can put New York as a state, leave the city blank, type in CUNY for my school name and hit search. And now the system's going to pull up different names for CUNY colleges in New York, and here we have 18 options. So let's say I'm doing City College, I'm applying to College of Staten Island, CSI, so that's my school there. Let's say I'm also doing Baruch College. So I'll check off all the appropriate CUNY schools, and once I feel like I've selected all of my colleges, I can go next. Now, they're going to give me the list of colleges that I selected. So in this case, we have 6 schools. We have 3 SUNYs and 3 CUNYs, and they're going to ask us our housing plans. Now, for any reason I listed a school by accident that I want to delete, you can use this plus button and it'll give us the option to either reorder or remove a college that we may have listed by accident. If I don't need to change anything, I'm going to leave that unchecked. Now, a lot of students ask if they have to worry about the order of their colleges. FAFSA does not share your college list with other colleges that are listed. So if you're sending this FAFSA to Binghamton, they're not going to know that you've also applied to Albany and Buffalo and a bunch of other CUNY schools. They're simply going to get a FAFSA report that has their name on it. So there's no worry about having to necessarily list one college first and another college second. What's more important is answering questions about our housing plans. So am I going to be living on campus at this school? Am I going to be commuting from my parents' residence? Or am I going to be living off campus, which means am I going to have my own apartment that I'm paying rent for and living and commuting to the college from there? So let's say for this example, the student is going to be living on campus at their SUNY schools. And for example's purpose, our CUNY schools, let's say that this student who's completing FAFSA is a New York City resident. And so for their CUNY colleges, they expect that they're going to be commuting to those, so they would list with parent for those options. So once that's good, I can either continue to add more schools if I forgot to list a college, or I could simply go next and continue working on my FAFSA. Now we're going to be brought to what we call the dependency status section, where we're going to answer questions that make a determination as to whether or not we need to file FAFSA as an independent student by ourselves, or using parent information as what we call a dependent student. So these questions are going to be important to answer correctly. So when they're asking here, what is your marital status as of today? Remember, we're talking about the student. So we're answering questions specifically about students. So we don't want to by accident list that we're married when we're a parent that's married. So if our student is single, they're not married, we're going to indicate they're single and we're going to go next. More questions for the student. Does the student have children who receive more than half of their support? Does the student have dependents other than their children who they live with or receive more than support? So if none of these situations apply, we're going to simply click no. And we're going to be given some more situations that might potentially qualify us as an independent, such as being in the military, a veteran of the military, being an orphan, having been in foster care or a dependent or ward of the court at any time since age 13, being emancipated, or being under the care of someone other than my parent who has legal guardianship of me as determined by the courts in my state. So if any of these situations apply, I can click yes, and you would be able to apply as an independent. For this example, we're going to apply as a dependent student by saying that none of these situations apply. Now, we do have a video that covers dependency status, so you definitely want to check that out if you want to learn more about special circumstances and whether or not you can qualify as an independent student. The final question is in the dependency section. We'll ask if we're homeless or self-supporting. This is asking if me, the student, on my own, am I homeless? If I'm homeless with my family and my family, I live with my mom, dad, and we live in a shelter, this isn't what this question is asking. It's asking specifically if I'm on my own, if I'm away from my parents and I'm living in shelter on my own. So that's the type of student that they're identifying here. So we're going to say no in this example and we're going to go next. And now the FAFSA will say, well, based on the fact that none of those situations apply to us, they expect that we will be applying as a dependent student, and they're asking if we can provide information about our parents. So if I am a dependent student and I have my parents' information, I'm able to apply, I will simply click next. So we're going to do so in this example. And then you notice the FAFSA will shift from asking student information related questions to now asking information about the parents. So all the questions I'm going to be asking, they're going to be asking us here that we're going to be answering here are all going to be specific to the parents of this student, starting with marital status. So we're going to look at the marital status questions and we're going to answer our appropriate marital status. If my parents are married or remarried, I'll simply enter in the month and the year of when they got married. If I have a single parent, then I'll simply indicate whichever parent marital status applies to my single parent. So let's say my parents were divorced or separated. And then I'll be asked to enter in the month and year that my parents became divorced or separated. And then you'll notice that the FAFSA will ask me, which of my two parents' information will I be providing? If you're going to use a single parent marital status, the FAFSA will only request information from the student's custodial parent, which is the parent who the student has resided with the most over the previous 12 months. So if the student primarily lives with their mother and the father is the non-custodial parent, you would just simply indicate I'm applying for FAFSA using my mother's information only, and the FAFSA will not ask any information about my other parent. So we're going to continue this example as a application for a single parent. So we'll continue saying that we're applying just with mom's information. Now you can see in this example here that if I indicate that my primary parent, my custodial parent, they're only asking questions here about my mom. If I were to go back and say that my parents are married, or maybe they live together but they're not married, then FAFSA would expect me to provide information about both my parents, and it would ask me about parent 1 and parent 2. So they're going to say, who's your first parent? And that could be my father, mother, or step parent, or who's my second parent once I finish filling this out. So let's do this example where we have 2 parents. So we're going to look up and we're going to enter in their social security numbers. And then we're going to enter in their last name and first initial of their first name. So this is going to be parent A. And if my parents have an email address, I can enter in their email address. Then I'm going to be asked to enter in my second parent's information, because remember in this example, we indicated that this is a 2-parent household, not a single-parent household. If I had just entered in information saying it was just my mom I was applying under, then I wouldn't need to enter information about a second. So we're going to enter in information here about parent B, and then we'll continue. Have our parents lived in New York for at least 5 years? So if they have, you can simply say yes. And if we say no, it's the same thing that we saw with the student. We'll have to indicate that our parents are currently living in New York. And if they didn't start living in New York before 2016, we would simply enter in the month and the year that our parents also started living in the state. Now we're brought to the household size screen, where we're going to be able to enter in information about our parents' household size. So we already have some of these numbers filled out for us. They know that there's 2 parents, and they know that there's me, the student. So now they're asking, do my parents have other children that live with us? So let's say I have a brother, a younger brother that lives with us. I would simply enter in 1 to make this now a household of 4. They're keeping a tally of the number of family members in my household. So they knew it was originally 3, but when I added my brother, I put 1. Now they changed that number to 4. They also want to know if my parents support other people that live in the house. So let's say that my grandparents live in the house with us, and my parents may claim the grandparents on their taxes. I would enter them here. If I live with other people who are not claimed or supported by my parents, let's say I have an uncle that stays with us here and there, but he does his own taxes, he supports himself, he's not claimed by my parents on their taxes as their dependent, then I wouldn't enter him. So let's say there's no other people that my parents are responsible for other than myself and my brother. I would put 0 for this, and now we have a household of 4. Now they're going to ask that how many people in the household will be college students in the next school year, not including the parents. So they don't want to know, will any of my parents be going to college? They want to know, do either me or my brother, will either of us be in college next year? Now, the minimum answer to this question should at least be 1, me, the future college student. But if my brother was also going to college, I could make this 2, or whatever the appropriate number is for the family members that are going to college. Remember, you're not including parents in this number. So once we've gotten past our parent demographic information, they've collected the basic information they need to know about our parents. Now we're up to the section where they're going to start asking about the parents' financials, starting with whether or not did they file a 2019 federal income tax return. Everything for the 2021-2022 FAFSA is going to be based on 2019's income and 2019's taxes. Now, if my parents have filed a 2019 federal tax return, they can say they've already completed it. If they are going to file it in the next few weeks, I can say they will do one. Or if my parents didn't work and weren't required to file taxes, I could simply say they're not going to file. So there's no wrong answer here, but some folks say, oh, do I have to have filed taxes to do FAFSA? Some people may have not filed taxes. You're simply going to enter that you did not file. But if your parents did work and did file their tax returns, you would say that they've already completed them. And they're going to ask us what type of tax form did our parents complete in 2019. You're going to want to have a copy of your parents' tax pages because this information can be found from their federal tax returns By simply looking through their tax packet, you can see that they file an IRS 1040. Most people who live in the US full-time file an IRS 1040. These other options would be for folks, for example, who live in Puerto Rico and would be doing a Puerto Rican tax return, or live in a foreign country and did a foreign tax return. So most of our students in this walkthrough are going to be putting IRS 1040. The tax filing status is also going to be found on the page of my parents' taxes where their names and information is. And this is where I'm going to be able to find out, how do my parents usually file their taxes? Single parents might be using single or head of household to file their taxes, whereas married parents might be using married filing joint or married filed separate as their option. So you want to double check their tax forms and find that information, like I said, usually on the first page of their 1040 forms, where their names and date of births are and their social security numbers, all that information. There'll usually be a checkoff box where they check how do they file, single, head of household, or married filing joint. So in this example, we're going to say married filing joint return. We're given this option that's called Link to the IRS for the IRS data retrieval tool. Now, this is a very great option that if we can use it, it would allow us to download the required information that we need from our parents' tax returns to fill out the subsequent questions about our parents' income. We could simply click Link to IRS, and then we would be required to enter in our parents, which parent are we going to be using, and they're going to ask us, does our parent now have an FSA ID for FAFSA, a FAFSA username and password that they can enter in order to access this feature of the IRS data retrieval tool. If your parent does not yet have an FSA ID and they would like to download their taxes using the IRS data retrieval tool, then they can simply create one right now. If you've already made an FSA ID for your parent, then you can just simply enter their username and password, and then you can go next. Now, if you use the IRS data retrieval tool and you enter in the parent's FSA ID, their username and password, you'll be brought to a screen that asks you if you want to proceed to the IRS site, which you'll click proceed, and then you'll be given a warning message that you're being transferred away from FAFSA to the IRS site where you can retrieve the tax information that you're looking for. Now, you'll have a warning message about proper use of the IRS site for purposes of retrieving the taxes, and then you'll be asked to review and enter the additional information required, such as the address of the person who you're trying to request the taxes from. So if I'm trying to retrieve my parents' tax information, I want to make sure their name is appropriately written here, that you have the correct date of birth for my parent, the correct filing status, and then I want to enter in the address that they use to file their 2019 taxes. That way this system can retrieve the appropriate copy of the taxes. So once I have that all filled in, I'm going to hit submit. And if it works successfully, I'll be brought to this page where they give me a summary of all of the 2019 federal income tax information that they found for my parent. And then I'll have the option of checking and then transferring, choosing to transfer that information now over to my, into my FAFSA. And what you'll notice is when you go back into the FAFSA, any questions related for the taxes are going to say transferred from the IRS, which means those questions are automatically answered and you don't have to worry about going through the taxes and answering those questions. Now, in some cases, you may not be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool. Sometimes you'll attempt to retrieve the taxes and you'll get a red error message saying for different reasons why the taxes cannot be transferred. Sometimes you're not even presented the option to use the IRS data retrieval tool. In this example here, based on how the parents filed the taxes, they may not be eligible. So for example, if parents filed their taxes married filing separately, they wouldn't be able to combine the downloads of two separate tax returns using the IRS data retrieval tool, so you'll be excluded from using it. So in those cases, you'll have to simply go next and bypass the option for the IRS data retrieval tool, in which case the system will then ask you to manually enter the tax information directly from your tax forms to the FAFSA form. Now, once again, as I mentioned before, the questions are going to carefully explain the information that they're requesting, including specific line numbers. So in this case, they're asking for the parents' adjusted gross income for 2019, which is found on their IRS 1040 on line number 8B. So all I would do is look at their tax pages, find line number 8B, and then I would just transfer that number here. So let's say in this example, that line was, their adjusted gross income was $40,000. Now, once again, as I mentioned before, there is this little question mark bubble that if I'm unsure what they're asking for, or where can I find a specific number of income that they're asking for my parents' taxes, I would just simply, click on the question mark bubble. So if I needed additional information about a specific line that they're asking for my or my parents' taxes, I could simply click on the question mark bubble, and I'm given direct help text that helps me kind of locate the information that's needed, including a really nifty copy of a sample 1040 form, which will help direct me to the specific line items that I need. So you definitely want to make sure that if you're unsure where to find a specific information from a tax return, just simply use that question mark bubble and it'll bring you to this help text. And if you scroll up and down this help text, you'll find a very great image that will help refer you to the specific part of the taxes that they need to get that information from. So once I've entered that number, I'm going to go next, and they're going to ask me some additional numbers. And once again, similar, they're going to be asking me questions related to my parents' wages, which can be found on their W-2 forms or on their 1040s, taken from certain line items from their 1040 forms. If I'm unsure what they're asking me to look for from here and how do I find that information, I click on the help bubble and they'll give me some images and examples of where am I finding the answers from my parents' tax pages to answer those questions about their specific income. So in this case, they want to know how much did each parent earn from work. So we've obtained that information from their tax forms, from their W-2 forms, and we'll go next. And then they're going to ask if my parent file a Schedule 1 with their taxes. Once again, if I don't know what that is and I'm trying to figure out where do I find out if they did a Schedule 1 or not, I could just pull up the help text and they'll tell me where to find that. And if I don't know, I could simply say don't know. If they ask if my parents a dislocated worker, that has to do with my parents are currently unemployed. So that's either yes, no, or don't know question. And then depending on my family income, I may be asked additional questions about other types of programs we may be receiving. Now, FAFSA doesn't want to know how much income we get from these programs. They simply want to know, does my family receive any of these benefits during 2019 or 2020? Such as Medicaid for our health insurance. So that could be for myself as a child or for my parents. Do we get supplemental security income, SSI? Do we get SNAP, which is food assistance? Do we get free or reduced price school lunch? Do we get public assistance benefits, which is also called temporary assistance for needy families? Or do we get WIC benefits for families that have young children? If none of these apply, I can say none of the above, but let's say care through Medicaid, and we also get food assistance, and we also get free lunch. I would just simply check off those programs. I wouldn't need to provide any other different additional information. Now, they may also ask me additional lines for my parents' taxes. Once again, they're asking about what their income tax liability was. So I'm going to click the question mark bubble, and it's going to tell me I want to look at line 14 of their taxes and enter that line. So we're going to enter that line amount there. And then we're going to move forward and we're going to keep answering any additional questions. Now, for all these additional questions about different types of income that they receive, you want to read these carefully. If none of these apply, they're already set to 0, assuming that your parents may not be receiving these income or have any of these benefits. But if there's something specific that sounds like it might be on their taxes or you're not sure, once again, click your question mark bubble and they'll try to direct you to where you would typically find those income figures on their taxes, and you can see if they have those numbers or not. If I'm looking at my parents' taxes and it's blank, then I would just put 0 or assume that those are 0, that they don't get any of those things. So you would fill out anything appropriately here. Now, some things can't be found on my parents' taxes. There are other items such as child support payments. If I have a step parent that's paying child support out for children from a previous relationship or a previous marriage, there's certain things that I may be getting or my parents may be paying or receiving that are not found on their taxes. So the parents would just kind of look through these questions, see if any of these things apply, and then enter 0, leave it at 0, or enter the appropriate amount. If I had a single parent family, on the next screen, they would ask, does my parent receive child support for the children in the household? and I'm asked to report how much did they receive for all the children in 2019. So if this was a single parent example, and let's say I get $1,000 a month in child support, I would put $12,000 is what I typically get over 2019 for child support for the children in my household. If I don't get any child support, I would leave this at zero. In this case, this is a married family. There's no child support, so we're going to leave it at zero. Another question I'll highlight here are payments to tax-deferred pensions and retirement savings plans. The FAFSA is going to ask if I contribute on a pre-tax basis to any kind of 401k plan through my job. And so that would typically be captured on my W-2 form. And if I use the help area here, they once again point out where on my W-2 form would I typically see the information that they're referring to, and it would be in this box 12 section, but only certain codes. So if I had an income figure in box 12 and it was code E, which would be common for a 401k contribution, I would enter that amount from my W-2 form here as part of our other income resources that they're collecting on the FAFSA. If I were getting any other type of income, like a untaxed disability pension or workers' compensation, things that are not reported on my taxes, I would also enter those the annual amount that I got in 2019 in the appropriate boxes. So once you've carefully gone through those questions, you're going to go next, and you may be offered the option to skip questions about parent assets, or you may be asked to provide additional information about parent assets. Sometimes you see the asset question offered as what we call an asset test, where it may ask you, does a certain amount, do your parents' assets exceed a certain amount? And it may give you an example amount, like 15,000 or another number. Now, if I'm given the option to just purely skip it, then yes, I may skip this. Or if I'm not able to skip it, or if the amount that they give me, my parents do have more assets than the amount that they show, then I would be required to enter the specific information about parent assets, which could include the value of their cash, savings, and checking account balances, could also include the value of their real estate and investments, but not including retirement funds and not including their primary residence. And then also a question about business values with an exemption there as well. Now we're going to have a video that dives deeper into assets, but I will advise you to always click on the question mark bubble and get that full explanation of what they're looking for, especially when it comes to the investment question in the real estate. You don't want to make a mistake and report an asset value that's not required, such as the value of a 401k, which is excluded, or annuities. There are certain things that they do not require, and there are certain things that they are asking you to enter. So definitely use those question mark bubbles before you enter the numbers. In this example, we're going to skip the questions about assets, and now we're going to be brought over to the student's financials. It's very important here that you know that we're transitioned back from parents to the student. So the questions that they're asking here about taxes and about income are all related to the student. They have nothing to do with the parents. So they want to know here, did the student file a 2019 federal income tax return? Let's say in this example, the student didn't work last year, they're a high school student, or even if they did, they didn't earn enough to file taxes, you would simply say not going to file. But if in this example, the student did file taxes, then you would say the student filed, and you would appropriately report their income the same way we showed you for the parents. So we're going to say not going to file in this example. And now we're asked, did the student work at all in 2019? How much did they earn from any wages, salaries, or tips that they got in 2019? So let's say I had a summer job in summer 2019. I did I was a lifeguard for a community pool, and I earned about $3,000 over the summer. Typically, I would have a W-2 statement from that job that I got earlier this year. Whether I file taxes or not, I'll just simply enter in what income I earned in 2019, and then I'll move forward. They're also asked if any of these income sources apply to students. So does our student pay child support to children from another relationship? So most of these are typically going to be zero. So we're going to kind of scan through these and say none of these apply. Does our student receive child support for their children? So you want to be careful here not to double report child support that a parent receives for the student. This is asking, does the student have a child who they receive child support from that parent of that student? So if you're a parent, you're thinking about, does your child, you have a grandchild from your child, and does your child receive child support for that grandchild? So they're not asking what child support you've received for the student, they're asking what child support your child has received for their children. So if your child doesn't have any kids of their own, then this is always going to be 0. So you're going to kind of read through these. And like I said, in many cases, these are typically not going to apply to the student. So if none of these apply, none of them are familiar, then we're going to just simply leave it at 0 and we're going to go next. The students also asked if they'd like to skip questions about their assets. Once again, you may be required to answer the asset questions. You may be given that asset test where you're asked if the assets exceed a certain amount. So you're just going to answer these questions accordingly. If you are required to answer questions about the student asset values, these are things that the student may be the owner of, such as their own bank accounts, such as their own investments. So once you've gone through the financial sections for both the parent and student, and you've answered the questions to the best of your ability, you are then brought to the summary page. You'll be asked if you are a preparer. So a preparer is someone who's doing the FAFSA on your behalf, such as a professional FAFSA filer or an accountant. So for most people who are doing the FAFSA on their own, we're going to just say, no, we're not a preparer. We're the actual person who's applying. So we check off no or leave it at no and we go next. Now we're brought to our summary of our FAFSA, and we can kind of double check, make sure we did all the questions correctly. If there's something that needs to be fixed, like an email or a phone number, we can click on that question and it'll redirect us back to the screen where we can make our changes. So we're going to just review everything, make sure everything looks good, our colleges look good, and then our parent information, and of course the income. So if everything looks fine and we don't need to make any changes, we're just simply going to go next. We can also print the page if we want to be able to save a copy of the answers on our form. And so here is where we now provide our signatures. Now, in order to sign off on this, we have to have an FSA ID, and you notice they require signature from the student and a signature from the parent. Now, when the student provides their signature, if they've already logged in using their FSA ID, they would simply be presented with sign button. You have to read and agree to all these terms, and there would be a simple button that says sign. If the student hasn't yet entered their FSA, at this point it's going to be required in order to be able to sign the FAFSA and move forward to submitting it. Now, once the student has done their part of the signature, it brings you back to the page where we now have to provide our parent signature. Now, this was a married parent situation, so they're going to ask us, are we going to be signing for parent 1 or are we going to be signing for parent 2? Only one of the two parents are required. We just want to make sure we're signing for the one who has their own FSA ID. So let's say my parent 1 is the parent that has their FSA ID. So we're going to select them. We're going to agree to all the terms and conditions. And then we're going to enter parent 1's username and password, and we're going to click sign. Now, for whatever reason your parent does not have an FSA ID, so for example, a parent who doesn't have a social security number wouldn't have been able to make an FSA ID, you can simply use the other options to sign and submit, which would include printing a signature page. A signature page allows you to sign your FAFSA, but on paper, so it allows us to still submit our FAFSA, but it's not going to be considered signed or processed until they receive this page. So if you do need to use a signature page for whatever reason, you would indicate that you'd like to sign with a signature page. The FAFSA would then prompt you to print that signature page in order to allow you to proceed forward and then eventually submit your application. So you're going to have a copy of the signature page where you would provide student and or parent signatures. You would print this out, and then there would be a address where this gets mailed. And then this is how you would then be able to continue to then submit your FAFSA. You have to indicate that you want to print the page and go through the printer dialog, because if you don't do that, they're not going to give you the option to submit your FAFSA until FAFSA has seen that you've actually attempted to print the signature page. So once everything has been applied, either you've chosen to sign on paper or you've applied the appropriate FSA IDs and you've signed it electronically, you're going to hit submit my FAFSA now. Now you'll be brought to the FAFSA confirmation page, which is your final page of FAFSA. You definitely want to read this page carefully and look for any links for next steps. We have a video that's going to cover the New York State financial aid application process, and it's going to be important to note that there will be a link on this page that will connect you to be able to apply for your New York State financial aid, so you definitely want to look out for that. You also get the list of schools that you've applied to, notifying you that they'll be sending a copy of the FAFSA to those schools once it's processed. So now that you've successfully submitted your FAFSA, you can log out and return to the home screen, and you'll see that your FAFSA will be in a processing status. Typically takes around 3 days for your FAFSA to be processed, so you'd see your status change from that your FAFSA was submitted to that your FAFSA was processed, and then you can make changes as needed.